Started out on live, man, that was the play. Streaming every night, building up the sway. But as the site faded, I had to find my way. Now I'm hopping platforms, surfing through the fray. Got my crew behind me, yeah, we call them givers. Chillin' IRL, catching all the rivers. Farkle in the chat, bringing lost to the grind. Talking crypto games while we sipping Jack Fine. Gives a minute, yeah, we take our time. Living in the moment, the life's a subtle rhyme. From the land down under, streaming through the night. New Zealand vibes, surfing waves day to night. Always looking for the next thrill, that's where I ignite. Community so solid, always shining bright. Rolling deep and cruising for the height. From the struggle to the stream, it's all just a game. But with the giver found, we're making our name. Tracking crypto profits, life just gets sweeter. Every view and every stream, making life a keeper. Give us a minute, yeah, we take our time. Living in the moment, life's a subtle rhyme. From the land down under, streaming through the night. Got my heart on my sleeve, everything feels right. So here's to the journey, no regrets in sight. Each laugh and each tear, it's a beautiful fight. Keep the wave rolling, let the good vibes flow. We're the givers, together in the show. Gives a minute, yeah, we take our time. Living in the moment, the life's a subtle rhyme. From the land down under, streaming through the night. Got my heart on my sleeve, everything feels right. Script I play a game from start to next time chasing fame with gear behind me changing season through the net living out the dream got my acoustic strong curing and chill for cracking jokes go spot the thrill in an energy weeds we ride the waves our streams phone no better days Gives a minute yeah we take our time living in the moment the life's a subtle rhyme.
Hello, the internet. It is Monday, the 2nd of March, 2026, and welcome back to the channel. I got to address. So I went back and watched the VOD of the last day of summer Tilbury Cove stream again. That's the second time I've watched it, and it saddens me that I think. I mean, I haven't fully dissected all this, but I feel like I'm an angry person. I think I've got an underlying anger issue because if you watch that stream back and you see the amount of swearing, and I know we talked about this yesterday, and I know that I've kind of already gone over it, but it has been playing on my mind from Saturday. So all day Saturday, well, all day Sunday, and then all day today, including last night, where I got this dream that I'm going to play for you that I recorded. When I woke up from that dream, I was thinking about it, like why am I such an angry person now? I never used to be angry, but I am angry, and I'm like. It obviously came out in this stream, right? There's obviously something at play there. I was super angry and I was masking it by the beautiful sun behind me, the last day of summer and the water and the kids playing and all that cool stuff. But in actual fact, as I got more and more drunk, the anger came out, and I don't consider myself. Well, I didn't until now. I didn't consider that I'm angry about. I mean, it's obviously stemming from being let down by someone. I feel like I've been hard done by. I've been let down, and I don't know if this is one of the phases of grieving, but right now there's no denying that I'm in the anger phase. Like I'll walk around and I'll be talking to myself and like playing out scenarios in my head, and I'll be like wishing ill upon this person. I'll be cussing. I'll be saying horrible things that I know I wouldn't say in real, like in the real world, I would never say this, but in my mind, I'm saying it, and that justifies the way that she treated me. And so I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be the angry guy. I want to be able to go on live stream and have a few drinks and not get into that mode that seemed to get there so easy on Saturday. Like I feel like I got into that. I guess this is a bit of a confessional, right? This stream, a bit of a confessional, because I don't like who I was on that IRL stream. I do not like who I was. It's embarrassing. A lot of it's cringe. I did the wrong thing. Like I said, I wasn't going to talk about, anything down that avenue. And then I go down that avenue. And not only do I go down that avenue, but then I start cussing and swearing and like obviously like trying to like, I don't know, like push this thing down that I didn't even really know, because I do feel better. Like I feel better about the relationship breakup. I feel like I'm past it. I feel like I'm in a much better place. But if that better place includes this element of anger, I don't want that. I don't want to be an angry guy. Now you might say, well, that was a one-off, dude. Something happened or whatever. Well, why? Why did that happen? If I've gone through this process, this grieving process and this acceptance and this change in situation, change in life, like a life change from having like someone in my pocket and someone that I could rely on to not having them, and I've gone through all this thing, does the anger part of it, because my counselor said, do not do the anger. She said, that's not going to help you. Don't get angry. And then there I am. I'm angry. I'm obviously angry. I don't know. I almost deleted that VOD. I almost erased it thinking, I don't want to see that. I don't want people to see that. It's embarrassing because it's obvious what's happening. I'm just trying to hide something and I'm doing a horrible job about it. I want to go back to the way that I was leading up to, I guess, May last year, even into the relationship. Like I was a happy, contented person. I was very happy, very contented. And it doesn't have to be because of this one person that made me happy. But on the same token, this one person should not be able to make me that angry either. Marty McFly Crypto. I had a binge drinking whore I almost married, cheated on me with 5 guys, gave me chlamydia at the end before confessing, don't drink alcohol, you might end up in jail on charges, let go. No, thank you for saying that. I'm not going to, that's a harsh, sorry to hear that, but I want to be the person that I was before. I want to be able to go and do IRL streams at a sunset and drink home brews and talk shit about crypto and have a great time. But I do not want it to get back into this, I can't talk about that. And then all of a sudden I'm talking about it. And then all of a sudden, to shield that I'm angry, I'm swearing like an absolute, like I don't swear at all. Like that's not true. I do swear, but I couldn't believe it. When I watched that VOD back for the second time, I was seeing how often I'm swearing. Like, what is with that? Have I suddenly forgotten how to speak and I've got to convey my anger, like the anger that I didn't even know I had, and I convey that via swearing? It looked lame. It looked horrible. It's cringe. It's embarrassing, and it made me feel crap when I saw that. And then I had this dream, which I will play for you in a minute. This dream last night, and I'm like, I woke up from that dream, or this morning, and I used to record my dreams. Part of the relationship, one of the cool things about the relationship was And I don't even know if she appreciated it because she didn't really let on. But I loved being able to just grab my phone. Oh, shit. See, I swore then because I almost knocked this glass of water over. I've got on my phone, I've got right here, and that's too dark. And I always had this before, but it used to be a beautiful image. But now I've just got this immediate button I can just press. Like, check this. I can't see it. If I just press that, where's my finger? It straight away goes to a voice recording. Now, obviously, I'm not keeping that one, but and so I used to love just like waking up like from a dream and just grabbing my phone and just starting a talk. Hey, I just wanted to record my dream for you because it's so strange, and I just because if you don't do that and then you go back to sleep, then you wake up an hour later, you either forget the dream or you forget parts of it. So if you record it immediately, then I used to love doing that and then sending it to her, and sometimes she'd say things, other times it would just go unanswered, like a lot of things. I did that this morning when I woke up from this dream because I wanted to remember it. And then I thought, well, wait a second. Throughout the day, I was like, well, what's this dream actually telling me? Now, I'm not really sure if I fully believe the meaning behind dreams and whatnot, but it's very clear in this dream what's going on. There's so many like symbols and signs that all point to this one thing. And so if it's okay with you, can I play the dream? It's about 6 minutes of me talking, and then we can come back in. And I don't know, like I don't want to make this entire stream about this. We've got this Epstein hijacking Bitcoin deep dive. I really want to get into that, but I do want to I want to acknowledge that, okay, let me play the dream and then we'll come back and I'll acknowledge the things I want to acknowledge. And then I think we've got to make some changes here, right? I think there's going to have to be some pretty, anyway, here comes the dream. I'll be here with you listening, and then we'll talk about it from there.
I'm going to start documenting my dreams just because, well, I used to, and I just enjoyed remembering them. And if you don't document them, then they disappear because memory, by the time you go about your day, they're gone. So this one, I had a few dreams last night, but this one stood out. I was at an airport and I was checking in to a Qantas flight. It was a beautiful airport too, like a really swish, like a super swanky airport. I don't know why that was important, but it was all like gold and just I knew that I was like wherever I was, whatever city, it was Australia, but whatever the city was, it was like super rich. I don't know why that's important, probably not important. And I'm checking in and I'm talking to the customer service rep, and they're saying this and that, and I'm like, okay, cool. And then she hands me the boarding pass, and I'm like, oh wait, can't I just get a digital one? Like I don't want this bit of paper. Like just give it to me digitally. And she goes, no, we don't do that. I'm like, what? And she's like, we don't do digital. We only do physical paper. People have been asking, like, people want paper. And I'm like, no. It's 2026. People want digital. They don't want paper. And she's like, well, we've discovered in all of our market research that they actually do want physical paper. I'm like, who the hell is doing your marketing? No one wants paper. We all want digital. At least give us the option to choose. Like, don't force paper upon us. And she goes, I'm sorry, this is the way it is. This is how we do it at Qantas. I was like, wow, okay. And so she hands me the boarding pass in like a little folded over envelope. So I'm like, what? I've got the boarding pass and it's also in a little purse, more paper. So this is like 2 physical items of paper that you're giving me. Then she hands me this yellow thing as well. And it's like some security like some kind of security document or something. And I'm like, a third piece of paper? Are you kidding me? I'm flying domestically. Why all this paper? And I started getting angry, and I was like, man, Qantas, this is what's wrong with Qantas. You got to get up to date with the times, man. It's 2026. I want this to go in my wallet, so like my Apple wallet, so that I don't have to worry about paper. I just want it all on my phone. And she's like, unfortunately, that's not happening, sir. Here, and she hands me another item of paper, and I'm like, are you kidding me? So all this paper, and then I take it from her, and I'm just like, man, I'm never flying Qantas again. This is horrible. And I scoop up all the papers, and I walk through the, when you've checked in, you walk through past her, or past the counter, and then down to where the bag drop is. And as I walk past, I say, anyway, have a good day. And the customer service rep says, get fucked. And I'm like, wait, what? I turned back to her and I said, did you just say get fucked to me? And she's like, yeah, you were being obnoxious. You were a horrible customer. I'm like, because I didn't want paper? And then you think that gives you the right to say get fucked to me? And she went, yes. And so then I went, I want to speak to your manager. And then all of a sudden other people turned up, like other Qantas staff turned up, and we were sort of like, it turned out that now the dream just kind of flipped, and we're inside like an office room, and everyone was there that was working for Qantas. And I was like, I demand to speak to a manager right now. And I started documenting, like I'm a camera out, and I was filming. And I was like, this woman, because I wanted a digital boarding pass, and she insisted on giving me paper as per your policies. This woman then told me to get fucked. And that's not appropriate. And I feel like I'm going to sue the hell out of Qantas for this. And yeah, there was a manager turn up, and they were like, well, we've got a policy where if the customer is being obnoxious, we can speak how we want to them. We're all Australians. We use that term. Get fucked is a pretty, a lot of Australians use it, so we're trying to blend in and be Australian. And so yeah, we support her saying it. And yeah, you were saying that you thought Qantas should get with the times because it's 2026 and we don't offer a digital passport, a digital boarding pass. So yeah, she's in her right to say get fucked. And I was like, that's outrageous. I'm going to sue the pants off you guys. And yeah, ended up calling a lawyer, and that's how the dream kind of ended, or the dream kind of morphed into nothing. But I think I woke up. I think I woke up and went to the bathroom. I reckon what happened there, I went to sleep last night considering my foul language on the recent live stream that I did at Tilbury Cove, and how much I was swearing. And I really regret swearing as much as I did. It's kind of embarrassing, actually. Like, I watched back that VOD, and I think I need to address that again. I mean, I did address it on a stream, but I think I need to address it one more time, because something's wrong where I think I'm angry. Subconsciously, I'm angry at the breakup, and I think that came out in that stream. And I don't know. I need to make a change. I need to go from digital to paper boarding passes or something. Because if something's wrong there, like I don't know if it's deeper than that, but I obviously was talking a lot about the breakup, and I was swearing, and got drunk and really swore a lot. And so there's obviously something I need to dissect there. I might have to talk to my counsellor about that. In fact, that's what I will talk with her this week about. I thought I was better. I thought I was getting past all this, but go one stream where I'm drinking, and then the next thing I'm, saying I'm not going to be talking about it, but then I start talking about it, and I get really, really you know, I managed to hold the emotions back, but I also got super, like, not me. Like, I don't swear, but man, I was swearing all over the place. So something's wrong there. I think the dream tells me something, but I'm not exactly sure what it is. But I just know something's wrong.
And there it is, the dream. Something is wrong, obviously, and I don't really know. Obviously I'm angry at her, but I've already accepted that that's what it is. So why be angry? Like, it's that, just like trying to, you know, convince her of the wrong decision isn't going to change anything. So is anger not going to change anything. All anger is going to do is going to make me feel bad, like I have been for the last 2 days. So what I've got to do, and it's unfortunate because I said there that I'm going to talk to my counselor about it, but what I didn't realize is, what is it now? The 2nd of March. I don't have an appointment with her until the 30th. So that's a few weeks away. In fact, that's the whole of the month of March. And we purposely put it back for that because I said to her, I'm feeling much better. Like, I don't need to talk to you unless something changes, and nothing has changed until it changed. So maybe I could I don't think I need an emergency. I mean, I feel like what I could do, just play along, like maybe allow that to be a one-off, that one stream, that's a one-off. And I know I'm not going to get like that again. Maybe that's what I need to do. But if it's infiltrating my dreams, like this woman in the dream telling me to get fucked is obviously me. It's an inversion of me and how it would feel to mistreat someone. So I don't know what to do, but I've kind of made a decision. I don't know if this is wrong as well, but I don't think, aside from the girls that I've already met, I don't think I'm going to be dating anyone new for at least a little while. There is, I feel like what I'm doing with dating is literally just trying to replace her, like fill her gap. Shit, fill the gap. Wow, that came out really bad. I'm just trying to fill the gap that she left, to the point where when I'm dating these girls, I'm actually like comparing them, and that's not good for me, not good for them. And I don't think that's not a healthy way to date someone. Like, if I'm going to look for someone that's going to be, you know, someone that's beside me the whole way, like a real hold on a sec. I'm definitely not getting emotional. There's no more of that. Like, I'm able to retain myself. If I'm going to look for someone who's going to replace her in terms of being someone that's by my side through the good and the bad, I cannot compare her, to the ex, right? I can't. That's not fair. Not fair for the new, not fair for me. So I feel like I should just, I've got myself into this position where I feel like I could, but then am I being an asshole then? I feel like I could get out of these. I can get out of these now without too much issue. But I don't know. I don't know, but I know that something has to change here. Something isn't right. And I don't like being angry. I'm not an angry person. I do not want to come out of that experience being an angry young man. Young man. I said young. Yeah, I'm not. I want to be. Anyway, I also going to make this change, which is a pretty obvious one. And I know I've said this before, and this goes back to back to November times. From here on in, absolutely no more talk of her. No more talk of her, the relationship. No, probably not even talk about me. Like, I'm gonna find that super difficult though. I've always wanted to be I've always wanted to be me. I've always wanted to broadcast who I am, but I feel like it's, at least until I get this anger thing under control, I don't think it's going to help if I talk about anything. I think it's only going to help if I talk about things that are not relatable. Because there's going to, I mean, now that we've got the tech and the IRL set up with the Starlink Mini and all the powers and GoVan, it's all set to go live streaming. But if I can't sit there and booze up, and if I get I think the anger is sadness disguised. That's what I think was going on. You saw me swearing and cussing because if I wasn't doing that, I would have been super sad about her. And I don't want to do either of those things. So until I can nail that down, maybe just keep it. I mean, it looks like there's World War III breaking out. Maybe that's a distraction. I don't want to play that down either, but that is something that's happening. This Epstein hacking Bitcoin, I don't know about what this is from 2 days ago on the Corbett report. I want to see what that's all about. So I just wanted to come out here and the other thing too, I've had a chunk of skin pulled off my head. So this was meant to be cut out. This is a skin cancer, or it was, and it was meant to be cut out like November. It was meant to be cut out before whatever. And my doctor said I'm not cutting that out until we get you back to being strong. So that's today. But unfortunately, I'm going to show you a photo. This is a big gruesome. Unfortunately, when he saw me today, he said it has grown substantial since I saw you in November, and so it's going to be a big one. And take a look at this. Look at the size of the piece of bacon that came out of my fucking neck. See, there's a swear word where it was needed, right? That's when I would swear. There's a second image as well. It's the same kind of image, but it's probably better focus. And so that's going to keep me out of water. And by the way, there's another one on the back of my neck that has to come out as well. And he said, I wanted him to do them both at the same time, but he said, I can't because think about it. You're on that side. I'm working on here, and then I can't just flip you over and do the back as well. You've got the stitches, and he said there's 16 stitches. There's four stitches internal, like dissolvable stitches, and then there's 16 on top, which is bigger than this one. This one here, get that out of the way. That one there, that was 12 stitches. Can you see that scar? And then this one here is going to be 16. And it's right on my clavicle, the collarbone. So it's not going to be fun, that one. Anyway, the chat's super quiet. I guess I just wanted to come out here and put this down anyway, because if I don't put this down, I don't stick to stuff. So I brought it out on stream and I'm sticking to it. And I'm going to talk to my counselor about this in 3 weeks' time. If I need to, I'll book an earlier one, but I feel like at least recognizing that something is afoot, there's something going wrong here. That stream was an indicator. The dream was an indicator. At least now I can try to change it myself. So let's take a break. Surfing clip. I'll grab myself a coffee. We'll come back and we'll learn how Epstein hijacked Bitcoin. A deep dive. All right.
Welcome to the first day of autumn, March 1, 2026, the fall. Hello, autumn.
Well, so there won't be much surfing for the next little while until my until the stitches come out at the very earliest. Or maybe not. Maybe I could go out. I feel like I need to go surfing, otherwise I know I'm going to go into a horrible state of mind. Surfing keeps me sane. Yeah, I don't know. But it's now autumn, so cooler weather's on its way. I just ate a cookie. All right, let's move on, eh? Shall we move on? Are we good to move on? I mean, no one else is chatting with me, so I guess I'm good to move on. I feel like I'm good. I covered everything I wanted to. Yeah. Yeah, I think I hit everything. Yeah. Anyway, sorry, I was just thinking about other things. Let's move on. So this, how Epstein hijacked Bitcoin. This is the Corbett report. I don't know how much of this is real, but let's see. Let's see what we can seize. Where's my mouse? Here it is.
So it's now we know that it's there in writing that Epstein was funding this, while the Bitcoin Foundation, which imploded, was run by Brock Pierce, who was Jeffrey Epstein's advisor on crypto since 2011. So this gets more intertwined than I could have ever.
Okay, don't spoil it. Just get to the meat.
Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to the Corbett Report. It is February of 2026. And today I have a very important report for those who might be thinking that they are suspicious of all of the attention and coverage that the Epstein files are gaining in the establishment media. If the establishment media is talking about it, it must be a psyop and distraction, right? Well, it might be a distraction of sorts. That is a distraction from some of the really scandalous, truly amazing information that we have uncovered in these Epstein files. And specifically, I'm not talking about the more prurient and more sensational headline-grabbing types of scandals. I'm talking about a scandal that you may not have heard about, but is probably one of the more important revelations from the Epstein files so far. It is contained in a very extensive, very well-documented article that is now up on brownstone.org. It is called The Hijacking of Bitcoin, and it is by today's guest, Aaron Day. So, Aaron, thank you very much for joining us today on the Corbett Report.
Now, before we get into this, Aaron, the guest, why is he in an orange, like a sweater? He looks like he's in prison, right? And how come there's a dude behind that, the other dude interviewing? You could have just turned the camera slightly and not got a guy behind you. Anyway.
Thank you for having me on.
All right, let's get into this article, which starts by saying the original vision for Bitcoin was simple: peer-to-peer digital cash, free from banks and government.
Everyone on Kick. Everyone, well, that's a pretty cool handle. Orange highlights his skin tone. It kind of does, actually. He looks very well tanned. That's a very, very interesting handle you've got there, everyone. Everyone.
However, this article argues that this vision was deliberately hijacked, as Bitcoin is now pushed as digital gold, a scarce asset for Wall Street with slow and expensive transactions for everyday use. All right, well,
So that's the premise of the argument. So Bitcoin was hijacked, and it's now considered digital gold, a scarce asset for Wall Street with slow and expensive transactions for everyday use. I mean, none of that's not true. That's all true. Okay, so was there a hijacking, or is that just the end result?
With slow and expensive transactions for everyday use. All right, well, Aaron, my audience may or may not be familiar with the ins and outs of the development of Bitcoin in the crypto space. So just to get everybody on board, perhaps we can start with just some basic information. You start by talking about the 2015 to 2017 block size fight. So can you tell us, what was the original Satoshi Nakamoto white paper vision for Bitcoin? What were the block size wars about? And how did that subvert that original vision?
Sure. Well, I'd like to start by taking a step back even before that, which is to go back to 2008 when we had the financial collapse, well, the global financial collapse, but certainly, a lot of it was centered in the United States. And, at this point in time, the banks were bailed out to the tune of billions of dollars. 10 million plus people lost their homes. And so there was actually a bit of unity coming out of the financial collapse and the bailout, where you had the Tea Party on the right and you had the Occupy Wall Street movement, which was manufactured, but nevertheless, you had the right and the left unified in their lack of support and lack of confidence.
Dude, if you're trying to explain the block size debate, you're doing a terrible job at this point. You should have just gone straight into it.
In the traditional banking system for that at that moment in time. Bitcoin was essentially launched a year later, and the idea and the promise behind Bitcoin and what was written about in what's called the Bitcoin white paper was that, for the first time, we had this idea of having peer-to-peer digital cash. You had a cryptocurrency that could be used as an alternative to central banks, as an alternative to commercial banks. This was a form of money that was not created by these third parties.
Look at that. Imagine buying it's already changed. Imagine buying 2 Bitcoins for $27 on Mt. Gox. Imagine being able to do that. Yeah.
This was a form of money that was not created by these third parties, that had a fixed supply, that was intended to be used as an alternative currency. It was intended to be used as something that you would use to buy groceries or to buy coffee or to do day-to-day transactions. And it's a global currency, which is really important when you consider that 71% of the planet makes less than $10 per day. So the idea behind this is that you would now have a currency that you could use for day-to-day transactions that would have low transaction fees. And it's something anyone anywhere in the world could use for day-to-day purchases. So that was essentially the starting point. That was what the white paper was about. And that's how people were using Bitcoin in the early days. I was introduced to Bitcoin in 2012 by a guy named Roger Ver, who was speaking at a conference in my home state of New Hampshire called Liberty Forum. And he talked about what I just talked about, which is that, finally we have
everyone. They were just pennies when I first heard about Bitcoin from Max Kaiser. You really, dude? Did you buy? I mean, massive oof if you didn't. But then again, I didn't either when I first heard of it. I wish I did.
An opportunity to go
around
these
exactly.
central banks that foment wars on both sides and so on and so forth. And that got me excited. And so I actually started using it myself in New Hampshire. In fact, at that point in time, 2012, 2013, there were numerous restaurants and stores in New Hampshire that were accepting Bitcoin as a payment method. And a lot of people don't understand this at all about the initial use of Bitcoin. Most people, because I've gone, with my wife and I have been to 27 US states, 4 countries, talking about technocracy and central banks and what you can do as an alternative. In fact, you had me on the solutions report to talk about that a year or 2 ago at this point. And so we were using Bitcoin for that purpose. And by 2017, there were major retailers and organizations accepting Bitcoin directly. You had Overstock.com, where you can buy everything from furniture to a whole variety of different.
So let me predict, or let me summarize where I think this is going to go. I think this story goes to, at this point in time, Bitcoin was so cheap and the network was not so heavily used that transactions were speedy, transactions were minimal cost, and the price of Bitcoin was affordable for everybody. I think it's going to go to a point where Bitcoin is too expensive, the network's congested, and transaction fees are expensive. And because Bitcoin is so expensive because everyone wants some, that brought in the big players, the Wall Streets, that brought in the whales, that brought in, and I guess he's somehow going to link this to Epstein. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense that someone who has a lot of accessible cash, such as Epstein or any rich person, would eventually come across Bitcoin at some point. I don't know how they're going to tie this to being evil. Aside from the idea of Bitcoin not being what it is now, I don't think it's Epstein's fault. That's my point. But I don't know. I haven't seen the article. BlackRock, all the big names are going to come in because they have all the money, right? There were Fawcett's websites which would give you a whole Bitcoin every half an hour or so. Are you kidding me? I mean, I use Fawcett websites these days, but they do not give you a whole Bitcoin every half an hour. Holy crap. The Fawcett is so for those that don't know what a Fawcett is, it's like a tap. And the idea behind it is that it gives people access to cryptos, like small amounts of crypto, usually in return for doing something. PTC is probably the big one, pay to click. So you click on something and then typically you watch like a 30-second commercial and then they give you the crypto. The idea is it's what's called dust. It's a small amount of crypto and it's meant to get you in. So if you gather a little bit of dust on this one particular crypto, whatever it might be, maybe then you might be interested in buying some more later on. Of course, when Bitcoin first came out, it was the only crypto, and so they were giving Bitcoin out in faucets. And as everyone says here, everyone being the KickChat handle, you could get a whole Bitcoin every half an hour from a faucet. Let me just remind you, Bitcoin went to $125,000 a coin about a year and a half ago. And you could get one every half an hour for free by clicking a faucet. They say there's no money in crypto. Of course there is. And there are still faucets happening today. You can still claim Ethereum. You can still claim Solana. You can still claim all kinds of crypto just by... And I have one on my computer that I just press. Whenever I come past my computer in the day, I'm just like, oh, I'll claim that. Claim. Every 6 months you can withdraw it. It's literally a click of a button. Like, what harm can it be? I'm not installing anything. I'm not downloading anything. I'm clicking a button. And then it usually runs an ad, which I don't even see. I walk away. But yeah, thanks for reminding me of that. The Bitcoin, a whole Bitcoin every half an hour or so. Damn, dude. I'm muted. Play.
Products. Microsoft accepted Bitcoin directly. Expedia accepted Bitcoin directly. You could actually book your travel and flights. There were Subway sandwich franchises that were taking Bitcoin. It was really hitting mainstream adoption. And then all of a sudden in 2017,
the block size.
Bitcoin went from being fast and inexpensive to use, in fact, cheaper than using the traditional financial system. If you're using a credit card, for instance, the credit card processor typically charges 29 cents per transaction plus 3.29% of the transaction. And at that point in time, Bitcoin was better, faster, cheaper money.
So he's gonna argue that the block size change is what caused Bitcoin to slow down, and therefore it took it didn't take. Therefore, less people took it upon themselves to use it as a transaction method or a payment method. Is he then going to try to tie that into being Epstein's fault? I always understood, or from what I've learned, the block size change was an argument that occurred between the Bitcoin guys themselves. They were arguing amongst themselves about that. The maxis against the others. This is what I understood.
But then all of a sudden, as the usage surged, by Q4 2017, you were seeing average transaction fees of $50. And it would take anywhere from 7 to 10 days to actually finalize a transaction. Well, obviously, no business can afford to pay $50 for transaction fees, and no one's going to be willing to wait 7 to 10 days. And so all of a sudden, people stopped using Bitcoin for day-to-day transactions, and which we'll get into. That's why
they forked it. Yeah. Bitcoin Cash. I mean, Roger Ver was big for that. Yeah, to reduce that block size and speed up the transactions. And I mean, Bitcoin Cash, I never really investigated it personally. Like I never went down that rabbit hole, but I'm sure people have made enough gains from it for sure.
Started to shift. People stopped talking about Bitcoin as peer-to-peer digital cash, and then out of nowhere, people started talking about Bitcoin as being digital gold. They started talking about it as being a store of value, something that you don't spend, something that you just hold on to. And because there are only 21 million Bitcoin, allegedly, that will ever be created, it's even more scarce than gold. And, therefore, you should hold it and never spend it. And so this shift happened And, you know, the end point of the shift was 2017, but it turns out there was a process building up to that from, you know, kind of 2015 to 2017. And we now know more specifically who the players were. And it does involve Jeffrey Epstein. It involves people from traditional finance that were involved in funding and not only the changes to the system itself, but were heavily involved in what I'll call the propaganda to change the public narrative from a digital currency to this store of value.
And for people who need more detail and information on that process of the hijacking of Bitcoin and what the block size fight was about, I would highly recommend that they read the book by Roger Ver with Steve Patterson, Hijacking Bitcoin, The Hidden History of BTC. It's at hijackingbitcoin.com. It goes through that history and talks about some of more of the detail of what you just mentioned there. But let's start bringing in the Epstein side of this. And in order to do that, I think we have to start at least setting the pieces on the table here. So perhaps we can start by talking about the early Bitcoin Foundation that was running in the early 2010s that funded the core Bitcoin developers, how that collapsed and what came in to fill the vacuum of that collapse.
Yeah, and the way that I actually found out about all of this is I wrote a book a few years back called The Final Countdown, and my interest in this has been severalfold. One, you know, as a user of Bitcoin who found Bitcoin to become unusable by 2017.
I was about to say, when he says he's a user of Bitcoin, what does he actually do with it? But he just filled that blank by saying up until 2017. Yeah, you can't really do much with it, can you?
I've been interested in studying the history of this. But I've also been studying central bank digital currencies. And so three and a half years ago, I was studying what was going on, primarily because I was noticing that friends of mine that are at the intersection of crypto and liberty were being targeted by the federal government. And I looked into, well, why is this happening? Why specifically are people that are promoting Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies as an alternative to central banks, why are these people being targeted by the federal government? And then I discovered that there's a global movement to roll out central bank digital currencies. And a central bank digital currency is a digital form of fiat that can be tracked, programmed, and censored by the government and other third parties. So this is if you're interested in freedom and privacy, the last thing you want to see is central bank digital currency rollouts. And so as I started researching this, I found that there are 134 countries around the world at various stages of developing and rolling out CBDCs. 11 countries have already rolled out CBDCs. And these countries represent 98% of global GDP. So, I mean, this is essentially everyone effectively is actively engaged in working on these CBDCs. Well, then, you know, I started being based in the United States. I started looking at, well, what's going on in the United States? Where does the United States stand on this? And that's where I found, and most people still to this day don't know this, the Federal Reserve Bank has conducted 3 successful pilots of central bank digital currencies. There's a project called Project Hamilton, which is a project to replace essentially the dollar. It's a digital version of the dollar. And this project has been going on since, I want to say, 2018. They've developed a digital currency that can handle 1.7 million transactions per second.
Wow.
Far more than the current capacity of the U.S. financial system. This has actually been built.
That's huge.
This has been tested. There's another called Project Cedar and a third called Regulated Liability Network. Well, when I was investigating these, what I found was all 3 of these CBDC pilots came out of MIT. So it was MIT working with either the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston with this Project Hamilton or working with the Federal Reserve Bank of New York with the other 2. And at the time, I discovered that Jeffrey Epstein had funded this group out of MIT that was working on these CBDCs. So in my book and in subsequent articles, I made the point that, well, hey, it looks like Jeffrey Epstein is funding these CBDC pilots. What I also...
Okay, so he's funding the government to roll out testing for central bank digital currencies. Okay, get that.
Also found is, to your point about the Bitcoin Foundation, so to take a step back, Bitcoin is an open source project. So it's open source code. Anybody can go online and go to the GitHub and you can actually download and review and audit the code. There's no central organization behind Bitcoin.
Well, there kind of is. There's the core development team. That's not exactly accurate, is it? It's not as decentralized as he just tried to make out, because there is a core development team that can make changes to the code if enough of them agree, which they have done twice. CBDCs are the death of privacy and freedom. Okay, so he hasn't tied that back to Bitcoin yet, but I think he's about to.
Open source developers and people that contribute to the project, but there's no corporate entity funding it. Well, a lot of people might say, well, I hate
Well, hang on. Didn't he just say before that there was the Bitcoin core that was the funding mechanism for the early developers? So when did they stop? The initial developing team for Bitcoin was funded by the Bitcoin core team, right? That's what they just said. But then he just said that there is no one funding Bitcoin.
So you have open source developers and people that contribute to the project, but there's no corporate entity.
Oh, no corporate entity. Fair enough.
Well,
okay.
A lot of people might say, well, hey, this sounds great, but it turns out that open source developers don't develop code for free. There aren't also other white hat actors that are going out there auditing code.
So you're saying everyone says, yeah, Epstein paid the Bitcoin core team when they went broke at one point. So Epstein's paid the government to do their 3 different CBDC trials, and he also paid the Bitcoin core team. So he's got a foot in both camps at that point. He's just a wealthy dude, right? He's putting $100 on every number kind of thing.
People work for compensation. This shouldn't be news to anyone. This shouldn't be a surprise. But if you have an open source project, then the project itself is subject to whoever's funding the developers, and the project could go in a direction you don't want it to go. So what happened is an organization was formed, a nonprofit called the Bitcoin Foundation. And it had,
this is headed by Roger Ver, right? This is the guy who argued for the blockchain, the block size change.
Original people involved with funding it, Roger Ver and some of the earlier developers, and a lot of people contributed. And the idea was that this Bitcoin Foundation would preserve the integrity of the project and preserve the integrity of the white paper.
Wait. So he was arguing against it. My bad. Yeah, so the white paper came out and Bitcoin was developed, and then people decided to change it, is what I'm seeing, which wouldn't have happened if the code was immutable. Right? It wouldn't have changed if there was immutable code. But it's not. It's changeable. So this concept of 21 million Bitcoin can be changed. Everyone talks about it. It's going to be scarce. It's only got 21 million until they decide otherwise.
A whole sordid history, which, by the way, should be written and researched on its own separately. I guarantee you there's a multi-part series on the internal dynamics of what happened with the Bitcoin Foundation. But before I get into kind of where the Bitcoin Foundation broke down and how this ties into Jeffrey Epstein, I want to talk about a character named Brock Pierce. Now, Brock Pierce is somebody that I've encountered. I encountered him first about 26, 27 years ago, and I didn't even know who he was at the time. I didn't even connect the dots until 2015. And without going into my own story and background, I'll give you the quick version of it. I started a technology company in 1995, and I was in the process of taking this company public. And we hired an investment bank, this firm called Lazard Frere, which is a really niche boutique investment bank out of New York City, but they usually only work on really high-end deals. And so it was a big deal that they were working on, our IPO as a kind of early technology company. But they had another company ahead of us that they were in the process of taking public called Digital Entertainment Network, DEN. And I encourage you to research on your own everything involved in this company. But the punchline is the company never went public and ended up filing for bankruptcy because all of the founders, including Brock Pierce, had to flee the United States because they were being charged with sex trafficking, or I don't know if it was sex trafficking, but there were underage boys and it was a whole big scandal. And so basically all of the founders left. Brock Pierce had previously been a child star. He was in the movie Mighty Ducks. And so he was actually brought in as a really young CEO to be the face of the project. And so I don't want to say anything defamatory about him, that he was necessarily leading the charge on, the other illegal activities. But the other two founders, I believe, were found guilty and were in hiding. Everybody went to Spain. Needless to say that their IPO didn't happen, and this actually impacted me directly because it actually shut the IPO window because the taint surrounding this project. And so I didn't know anything about it. I didn't pay attention. I couldn't have told you it was Brock Pierce then, but it resurfaced that then all of a sudden, the same guy, this same Brock Pierce, ended up becoming the chair of the Bitcoin Foundation. And I thought that was weird, just based on his background. I'm like, why is this guy the chair of the Bitcoin Foundation? But we later find in the Epstein files that Brock Pierce went to Little St. James Island to an event hosted by Jeffrey Epstein in 2011.
Whoops.
I believe it was called a Mindshift conference. A whole bunch of people from diverse technical areas were kind of sharing ideas and brainstorming and networking. And coming out of that 2011 event, essentially Brock Pierce began advising Jeffrey Epstein on all matters related to cryptocurrency.
Okay.
And I will tell you, no one knew this. I mean, I've been involved in crypto since 2010. I know people that have been involved in crypto since I was involved in 2012. I know people that have been involved since 2010. No one knew that Jeffrey Epstein had any involvement at all. Even the article that I wrote suggesting that he was involved in CBDCs, I only found one article where Jeffrey Epstein was ever interviewed talking about Bitcoin, and it was in a publication called NexaWeb from 2017. So the only article we ever have from Jeffrey Epstein is in 2017, where he discusses the fact that he believes that Bitcoin is not a currency. The peer-to-peer digital cash is outlined in the white paper by Satoshi Nakamoto, but rather he thinks it's a store of value. And I thought it was very bizarre. Like, why is the only article this guy ever has on this topic him talking about this narrative shift? It didn't make any sense to me, but I suggested in an article that, hey, maybe he was involved in not only funding MIT and these CBDCs, but then this other part where the Bitcoin Foundation, as I mentioned, is this nonprofit that's funding these developers.
Just to jump in there, it'd be a stretch to consider that Epstein didn't have any involvement or any knowledge of Bitcoin if he is actively funding the development team. Why would you? He obviously had some interest or some knowledge of the thing he was funding. And even to a further degree, he obviously had some knowledge of, blockchain technology. If he's funding the government's 3 different CBD projects, or what were they, tests? If he's funding that, he obviously understands that technology exists. Just because there was only one article about him, or one article where he mentions it, doesn't. I don't know. That seems a bit of a stretch to me. So it sounds like he's painting it as if it was like kind of nefarious, a bit sketchy, but it doesn't have to be, right? Yeah.
Where Brock Pierce is the chair. In 2015, that organization implodes. They have a whole series of internal issues, financial issues. Some of the people on the board had issues with the government involving cryptocurrency exchanges and money laundering and so on and so forth. And so it just so happens, as Bitcoin is making this shift from digital cash to digital gold, the funding of the developers went from the Bitcoin Foundation, headed by Brock Pierce, to MIT. MIT started to take over the funding of these developers.
Uh-oh. everyone, I think he may be attempting to make the claim that Epstein is Satoshi Nakamoto. That's what old mate in my chat was saying the other day. That's a huge stretch. That is a huge, and so therefore Epstein wrote the white paper. I mean, written by Satoshi Nakamoto. I mean, that's a huge claim.
And I suggested that Epstein might be involved. And we now know from the Epstein files that not only was he involved, but in an email from Joy Ito, who is the head of MIT, to Jeffrey Epstein, email exchange, Epstein's money was explicitly earmarked to fund these developers. And they even name the developers. There's Gavin Andreessen, there's Vladimir Vonderland or something like that, and a guy by the name of Corey Fields. So it's now we know that it's there in writing that Epstein was funding this, while the Bitcoin Foundation, which imploded, was run by Brock Pierce, who was Jeffrey Epstein's advisor on crypto since 2011. So this gets more intertwined than I could have ever imagined.
But why is this bad? I'm not too sure why this is perceived as being bad. Jeffrey Epstein's got a lot of money. He also has a lot of other interests which are bad, but funding the core development team for Bitcoin is not inherently evil or bad. As far as I can see, there's nothing sketchy there. Unless he's going to come to some ultimate conclusion about why that's somehow sketchy. He's also funding the government's CBDC trials. So what's the problem here? He's basically throwing his money around. I don't know.
As we'll continue to discuss, it even gets worse from there.
It does. And you've already painted quite an incredible picture there. And for people who need to see the evidence, obviously, Brock, my video editor, will be showing this on the screen, the specific email exchanges that you're talking about. But of course, they're all contained in this voluminous article that we're discussing here. So we've set the table, and now we have a sense of some of the players that are on this table. How do things develop from the point that we have MIT starting to literally fund the core developers of Bitcoin? How does the change take place, and what other organizations and people are involved in it?
Well, there's another step that actually happened before MIT took over the funding of the developers, and this involves the company Blockstream that you'd mentioned. And Roger Vere's book and Steve Patterson's book, Hijacking Bitcoin, goes into this in some detail, but I do want to explain a little bit about what Blockstream is and how all of this fits in. So Blockstream is a company that was started by a few early Bitcoin core developers. And the basic idea behind Blockstream is this. What they did was, and we haven't really talked about the block size, but the original idea behind Bitcoin,
which was the question 21 minutes ago. There we go.
Was for it to be peer-to-peer digital cash. And Satoshi Nakamoto discussed in these online discussion forums the idea that from the very beginning of Bitcoin, it was intended to compete with Visa and MasterCard. Satoshi talked about the idea that Bitcoin should, in the fairly early days, be able to handle 25,000 transactions per second, and that it should be able to get even faster over time as computers get faster, as bandwidth increases, so on and so forth. He was looking at Metcalfe's law and some of these other things that apply to technology, which is that, this still holds to this day. Technology tends to get cheaper and faster. And so he was saying, well, hey, 25,000 transactions per second now, but this thing should scale to do millions of transactions per second. And so the way Bitcoin works is you have what are called miners, but I'll try to simplify how this works. You have computers all around the world that are trying to solve very complex math problems that are very expensive in terms of computational power to solve these math problems. And the computer that solves the math problem first gets to add the transactions from in this 10-minute interval. So every 10 minutes, a new math puzzle is solved. and new transactions are added to the blockchain. So it's an immutable ledger, and every 10 minutes, there are new blocks of transactions being added to the blockchain.
Careful to say the ledger's immutable, but the code is not. He also should have mentioned there that the computer that solves the equation is rewarded in Bitcoin. That's how they mine Bitcoin. He didn't really, I mean, he might be saying that, but.
And the way that it was structured was, at the very beginning, every 10 minutes, if you solved this math problem, you would get initially 50 Bitcoin for solving the math puzzle, plus whatever transaction fees happened to.
He said 50. Solving the equation first would garner you 50 Bitcoin. Imagine.
Occur in that block of transactions. And then every 4 years, this reward that started out as 50 halves. So after 4 years, the miners would receive 25 Bitcoin for each block that was solved. And then 4 years after that, 12 and a half, et cetera. And you keep on doing this halving until at some point at the end, 21 million Bitcoin have been created, and that was the fixed cap. Well, why was this structure put in place? The structure was put in place as an incentive early on. While there weren't a lot of transactions and transaction fees, it was an incentive
to reward the miners.
For miners to secure the network and to have a lot of different computers competing to solve these math problems.
So it was to get everybody in and give them something in return that was worth virtually nothing at the time. But then the rest of the world took on and realized that, hey, this is scarce, it's got value, and therefore we want it. So we're going to start trading it as well as mining it. And then they have the miner wars where everyone comes in and whoever's got the most power can set up whoever can set up the most powerful computers and pay least in electricity for them can obviously mine the most blocks. Everyone gets in as quickly as they can. That's how China comes on board. And here we are in 2026, and what do they say? There's 19 million Bitcoin that have been mined out of the 21, but there's also 1 million that are locked up in Satoshi's wallet, which have never moved. Is that I don't know if you know what those numbers are. I think 19 or 18 million have been mined, and there's at least 1 mil that are missing, or not missing, but locked.
That you didn't have the concentration of the network in the hands of a small group of people. This was the economic system of Bitcoin. And so there was the original design had no limit to the size of the blocks. So in other words, the original idea was, well, yeah, we should be able to process 25,000 transactions per second. These blocks were expected to become large, and the miners were expected to be computers that were in big data centers. This was, again, Satoshi talked about this at length. But early on, as they were testing the network, as you're testing these kinds of systems and you're trying to work out the kinks, they put in a 1 megabyte limit just for testing purposes. Well, that 1 megabyte limit, you can only put about the equivalent of 7 transactions per second worth of data into a block. So this was initially done as a test. And then this is why we discuss in the hijacking part of this, a whole bunch of people then decided, well, we're going to make that 1 megabyte cap permanent. And they put a whole bunch of argumentation around it. The network needs to be decentralized, so on and so forth. And so we're going to throttle Bitcoin so that it can only do 7 transactions per second, but we're going to build what are called second layer solutions on top of Bitcoin to be able to handle more transactions and to make it, actual peer-to-peer digital cash. And so this company Blockstream was formed to be a second layer solution, a for-profit company that would benefit and in fact would only be viable if Bitcoin was throttled at 7 transactions per second. So does this make sense so far? Hopefully I know a lot of people.
I feel like he's explaining this extremely well. Like I was a bit skeptical at the start, but I feel like he's really explaining it extremely clearly. It's very, very, very good.
I've been following this for a long time. For people who need more information on this, of course, they can see the Hijacking Bitcoin article and the Hijacking Bitcoin book that we talked about before. But yes, long story short.
Everyone, over 19.9 mil have already been mined and roughly 1.1 mil remains to be released with mining rewards halving approximately every 4 years. Yeah, yeah. But how much? The final will be in 2140, so not in my lifetime. How much is locked to what they perceive to be Satoshi's wallet that's never moved? Because that's obviously the big thing, right? People claim to be Satoshi. You know, people claim that that Australian dude, and then people are claiming, yeah, you claim to, or you think this guy's claiming it's Epstein. And if people are claiming to be Satoshi Nakamoto, the most obvious way to prove it is to move some of the Bitcoin from that wallet. Just send it. If you are Satoshi Nakamoto, you have access to those wallets. You move that Bitcoin and prove that you are, but they don't. They won't, because they're not.
People who want to keep the blocks small, and those are the people working for companies like Blockstream that, oh, by the way, happen to have ties to Epstein. So let's get into that.
So there's that. So there's the company Blockstream.
I wonder why Satoshi Nakamoto didn't just implement the one meg block size from the get-go and code it, put it there in code. Why wouldn't he have done that? Why just have it as a test? Why not just code it in? Everyone, around 1 to 1.1 mil is in Satoshi's wallets, right. So effectively, there's 20 million Bitcoin, approximately 20 million if you don't include the extra mil that he has. 20 million that are circulating, or by 2140 there'll be 20 million circulating, basically. Yeah.
Benefits from the blocks being small. And Blockstream.
Wait, who did you say benefits from small block size?
To that.
So there's that. So there's the company Blockstream that personally benefits from the blocks being small. And Blockstream as a corporation, and we knew this from hijacking Bitcoin and from publicly available information, had, let's just say, the kind of investors that the point of Bitcoin was to actually get rid of these kinds of companies in traditional finance. One of the big investors was a guy named DeCastries, who was the CEO of AXA, a big European company. He also happened to be the chair of the Bilderberg Group. So you had all of these companies investing in Blockstream that were part of traditional finance, the thing that Bitcoin was there to disintermediate, to get out of financial transactions. Well, what we found in these Epstein files is that Epstein actually invested in Blockstream before the collapse of the Bitcoin Foundation and before he funded the developers who cemented the changes that Blockstream benefited from. This was absolutely bombshell information for everyone. No one knew this. This was not something that was widely known at all. And in fact, the CEO of Blockstream, from the emails, apparently visited Epstein's island, as did others involved with Blockstream, and nobody had any idea that this was going on. So in other words, to simplify this, Epstein invests in Blockstream, a company that benefits from Bitcoin being throttled. And then 7 or 8 months later, fortuitously, the company that had been funding the Bitcoin core developers, which was chaired by Epstein's advisor, Brock Pierce, collapses. And then he ends up funding the MIT developers that cement the 7 transactions per second and 1 megabyte block size.
Yeah, but he's saying it as though it was a preconceived, like, he's saying it though Epstein knew what he was doing. It sounds like he's just throwing his money around, is my claim. That's what it looks like. It's
just absolutely fascinating information.
It's not that fascinating. The man was so wealthy, throwing his money around, right? It's not that. You could probably find hundreds of different companies that he invested in that weren't involved in any of this stuff. Money that just went to waste. I'm pretty keen to see how he makes this claim about him being how he makes the claim Epstein is Satoshi. That's interesting. If that happens.
It gets even more bizarre as we go through this. Because remember, my first foray into this was, hey, it looks like, why is Epstein funding these CBDC pilots? So there are a lot of people claiming that these second layer solutions for Bitcoin would enable it to be peer-to-peer digital cash, as opposed to just, following the original design. But what you find is if you're going to now change the narrative for Bitcoin and you're going to call it digital gold and you're going to call it a store of value, well, in order to be a store of value, it needs to either maintain its price or go up in price. Otherwise, people will not view it as a store of value. Well, we're going to go back now to the same guy, Brock Pierce.
Wait. Now he's going to claim that these guys are responsible for the Bitcoin price going up? It's always gone up, though, and down. Interesting.
Co-founder of a company called Tether, which you may have heard of, which is a very popular company even today and a very large company now. Tether is a stable coin. A stable coin is a digital token that essentially represents fiat, where one token, one USDT token equals $1. And in theory, how this is supposed to work is, in order for this token, this Tether, to maintain its peg, there need to be assets backing it that are, equal to or greater than $1 worth of value. Well, it turns out that during this time period in 2017, when the narrative shift happens, a University of Texas study found that over 50% of the price appreciation from Bitcoin in 2017 was due to Tether being printed and used to buy Bitcoin.
Wait. Tether being printed. I don't understand that. So converting fiat to Tether, or how does Tether? I don't understand how Tether is mined. Did he say mined or printed?
Due to Tether being printed and used to buy Bitcoin.
How does Tether come about? What's the market cap of Tether? Because if it's 1-to-1, isn't it just linked to the supply of the USD? I guess I missed that.
But it was separately found from two different actions, one from the CFTC and one from the state of New York, that Tether was in fact not fully backed. And that the CFTC found, I believe, that there were really only 27 cents worth of assets backing $1 worth of Tether. In other words, they were printing Tether out of thin air and claiming it was backed by fiat, which is also money that's printed out of thin air, but it wasn't. And then they were using that to pump the price of Bitcoin, which is what created the whole store of value.
That's interesting. Okay, so they were spending Tether on Bitcoin, but they weren't. The Tether that was coming in, or the minting of Tether, wasn't 1-to-1 to the dollar. So they were basically creating wealth. They are supposed to hold that currency in reserve. What the one that's linked to the Tether? Yeah. That makes sense. And so they weren't. They lied about that. I mean, that's the first most scandalous thing that this article or this interview's mentioned, in my mind anyway. Everything else this guy's mentioned is just kind of factual, but that there, making a pegged coin that's apparently linked intrinsically to the US dollar, but it turns out it wasn't. He said 28 cents worth was, and the rest wasn't. So you're basically generating wealth there. Almost none of the stable coins have ever been audited. That's super sketch. I would never keep my crypto in a stable coin. I've just used it to go in and out when needed.
Narrative to begin with. So in other words, what I'm suggesting is the whole idea that Bitcoin is a good store of value is a fabrication.
Wait. Bitcoin not being a good store of value because a whole bunch of Tether was used to buy it and up the price at one point. What year did he say that happened in? It's not getting it off to a good start, but doesn't that iron itself out as the years go on? Interesting.
Based on this fake Tether printing that, Brock Pierce was the co-founder of that company, while also the guy responsible for handing over the development of the funding of the development of Bitcoin and hobbling it to MIT through Jeffrey Epstein. So it's just remarkable how all of these pieces are fitting together.
Okay, I don't think all these pieces fit together like he thinks, but it is interesting. But I just don't Like, again, I just don't see how someone with a lot of money investing in things intrinsically makes them evil. He's trying to get a return on his dollar, right? These guys seem to think this is the biggest conspiracy ever. I just don't buy that.
More and more remarkable because it isn't just Brock Pierce connection. There's other connections to this stablecoin space that present themselves in the Epstein files. Like, who's been in the news recently for his Epstein connections? Oh, Howard Lutnick, who denied having extensive.
That guy, I've never been to. The guy's a creep, and then he turns out he's totally linked to him. If Tether ever gets their reserve audited, you'll see even larger collapse than FTX. Well, so who's responsible for that? Is the SEC supposed to be looking into that? How come they're not reserved audited?
Epstein ties. Well, turns out he does have some Epstein ties. Let's talk about Howard Lutnick.
Yeah, Howard Lutnick is a very fascinating character in all of this. And I've actually been writing about Lutnick for a while. And this story is also, to me, when I look at this is a level of corruption that's far beyond, say, for instance, Nancy Pelosi engaging in insider trading. Howard Lutnick is, and where people may have just become familiar with Howard Lutnick is, he had to testify recently on his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Howard Lutnick is Jeffrey Epstein's next door neighbor in New York. And it turns out it looks like he might have purchased his house from a trust created by Epstein, which is bizarre in and of itself. And I'm not going to, the fact that, Epstein and Lutnick have, 9 and 11 are the addresses on the street that they share together in New York City. That, I'm not going to go, I don't know anything about where to draw conclusions with that. But
you know enough to bring it up. Why bring it up if you're not going to draw a conclusion? Dumb.
Lutnick was testifying for his position as U.S. Commerce Secretary. He claimed that, he'd only met Epstein once in 2006 in New York and was absolutely disgusted by him and had nothing to do with him. This was what he was saying as he was going.
But I live next door to him, but I never ever met him.
His confirmation process, and we now know from the Epstein files that that's not exactly true. We know that, in fact, Epstein donated, I think it was $50,000 to a fundraiser in Lutnick's name. Lutnick visited Epstein's island with his family. They were business partners together. So Lutnick completely lied about his relationship. And then even when he was grilled on it, he's like, well, the extent of my relationship is whatever it is that's in these documents. We already know that he lied before, and so I'm sure there's even more to it than that. But I had separately written, before even knowing the Epstein connection, about Lutnick's involvement with Tether. Now, this is a fascinating story. I've been around politics for a long time, and no one heard about Howard Lutnick. Howard Lutnick was not a major player in Republican politics. In fact, he was a major fundraiser for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So this is not a guy that is known for his role in Republican politics. So I'm going to walk through the timeline here. So before the election, a few years before the election, Howard Lutnick, his firm, Cantor Fitzgerald, invested $600 million in Tether. They were the largest at that point ever outside investor in Tether. And part of the terms of this agreement were that in exchange for this investment, Cantor Fitzgerald would essentially get the exclusive contract to manage all of the United States treasuries backing Tether. Now, I know this gets a little bit complicated.
Hang on. So he contributed 600 mil, and his part of that contribution meant he was responsible for all the treasuries that were backing, the ones that were not backing one-to-one, assumably. Interesting.
But I want to walk back a few steps. So
if Tether ever gets audited, this Howard Lutnick goes down hardcore. Yeah.
told you that Tether was found to not have reserves. Now, there was no requirement that Tether be backed by U.S. Treasuries. There's no regulation prior to this Genius Act, which I'm sure we'll get into. There was no requirement that you had to back your stablecoin by U.S. Treasuries. You could, for instance, back it by gold, silver, Bitcoin, other cryptocurrencies, whatever, just so long as you had adequate backing, there was no rule or regulation. So Lutnick gets involved to manage treasuries. Now, did Tether even have treasuries? I want to point out at this point, which, by the way, to this day is still true, Tether has never passed an audit. They have never successfully passed an audit, and they've actually gotten to the point now where they can't even get an audit firm to work with them. So, these big audit firms that work with publicly traded companies all of the time apparently don't want to work with this, company that has now a multi-$100 billion market cap. That's kind of a red flag.
Wow.
In and of itself. So Lutnick makes this investment with the contingency that he gets to manage these treasuries. Then all of a sudden he gets involved.
And I guess he tries to cover up the 80, 75-cent discrepancy or whatever it was
in Republican politics. Now remember, he's a big fundraiser for Hillary Clinton in 2016. He goes from that to being the chair of Donald Trump's transition team. This is a massive position. The head of the transition team is responsible for vetting all of the cabinet. So is involved directly in recruiting and vetting every person at the level of the cabinet. So how you go from not being in the Republican Party politics and supporting Hillary Clinton to that role is something that needs to be investigated, because that's very, very bizarre. But what's worse than that is originally Lutnick was trying to engineer and put himself up for Treasury Secretary. He was actually trying to position himself. There was a big kind of debate about this. And we now end up with this guy, Scott Bessent, who is an advisor to George Soros, which is a whole other separate bizarre situation. He ended up getting the Treasury position, but there was a whole bunch of infighting and everything back and forth because Lutnick wanted the job. Well, think about this. Lutnick just cut a deal with his company to manage the treasuries for Tether, and then he wanted to become the Treasury Secretary. I think that was even found to be a little bit too blatantly corrupt. And so instead, Lutnick ended up as Commerce Secretary. But what he did was worked closely with this guy named Bo Hines.
Wow.
Bo Hines was...
Look at Trump in that photo. That looks crazy. What are they doing? It's like he's just farted or something.
Brought in to be an advisor to Trump on crypto matters. And Lutnick working with Bo Hines.
Who did that on D-Live? Let me see who did that on D-Live. Netskis. How you doing, Netskis? A little hosty host. Thank you, man.
And others drafted something called the Genius Act. Now, I've spoken a lot about the Genius Act, and a lot of people don't understand what the Genius Act is or what the implications
Looks like a
are.
wax figure. Yeah, it looked like that. That was just me giving a host. Yeah, thanks, man. Cheers, Netskis.
As I mentioned, I was fighting CBDCs. I continue to fight CBDCs, and Trump came out and said, well, we're not going to have a CBDC. And he signed an executive order saying there's going to be no CBDC. So now people think that issue is dead. But in essence, what we have instead is something much worse. We've passed something called the Genius Act, which I'm saying is a backdoor CBDC. What this legislation says is if you are a private stablecoin issuer, a regulated stablecoin issuer, one, you have to follow all of the financial surveillance that comes out of Congress currently, the Bank Secrecy Act, know your customer laws, all of that. You have to comply with all of that. So in other words, your stable coins can be tracked and frozen and are now under the control of Congress. But on top of that, you now have to back your stable coins only with U.S. Treasuries. This is a massive windfall. The biggest...
Wait. Back your stable coins with U.S. Treasuries, including Tether.
Beneficiary of the Genius Act is Howard Lutnick.
And Tether.
Because his firm manages all of those treasuries and gets all of the fees for managing all of those treasuries. So, I mean, your audience is probably familiar with, the Federal Reserve and the creature from Jekyll Island, and the fact that the way our monetary system works, going all the way back to 1910.
Netskis, I must say I'm a little worried about my crypto at the moment, but I'll just keep holding it, I guess. That's conviction, dude. You've got to have conviction. Yeah.
A shadowy group of bankers got together, and basically we now have this system where, we issue money based on debt, and we don't even know who owns the Federal Reserve, so on and so forth. Well, Howard Lutnick won up this. So essentially now one of the largest players for the digital dollar, his firm is managing all of the treasuries. He's almost like leapfrogged the Federal Reserve. It's breathtaking how bizarre this is and how corrupt it is on its face. I mean, it's just the fact that this is going on. Well, now we know that I suspect this. I haven't been able to prove this yet, but I have to think that somehow Pierce and Epstein were involved in bringing Lutnick into this, because there are emails, and I actually also believe that it's likely that Epstein was involved in Tether as well, because we know that through Brock Pierce, Epstein invested in Circle, which is USDC. Well, I mean, what's the likelihood that Epstein's not going to get a chance to invest in the very project that his crypto advisor has started, right? I mean, and in fact, there are emails back and forth where Brock Pierce is asking Epstein to introduce Larry Summers to Tether. So clearly there's communication back and forth where Epstein's involved.
So far, I'm not tying all this back to the Bitcoin block size debate. I understand that the Tether situation is pretty sketchy, but I don't really see where this comes down to the store of value versus peer-to-peer digital cash argument that this interview kind of started from. We've kind of meandered past all that to now talking about, the Genius Act and the regulations that came into play there. It seems like we're stretching all around and trying to pull everything together here. Netsky's the best one I got was Pax Gold. That hasn't lost ground at all. Interesting.
With Tether, Epstein's involved at the level of, at the very beginning, trying to get Larry Summers involved. And I will point out, since this is timely today, I just saw in the news that Larry Summers has resigned from Harvard, where I believe he was the president, based on his extensive...
You wish you'd sold all your BTC for Pax, is that right? Well, I've never heard of Pax Gold. Let's go to CoinMarketCap and have a look at Pax Gold. I guess it's Pax. Pax Gold. Wow, it's trading at 5,000. Okay. Chart is on the 24-hour. It's looking pretty healthy. Let's have a look at all-time chart. Okay. That's a good-looking chart, dude. All-time. It's all up, man. Yeah, that's good. Cool. I know, right? Yeah, that's a solid chart, dude. It's always traded quite high though, 1,600. Let's take a look at the website. The safest way to own investment grade gold. A digital token backed by physical gold. So it's a CBD. Not really. Who holds it though? Pax Gold offers investors a cost-effective way to own investment-grade physical gold with all the benefits of the blockchain. Okay. Each Pax Gold token is backed by 1 fine troy ounce of gold, stored in LBMA vaults in London. If you own Pax Gold, you own the underlying physical gold. Interesting. So with that in mind, gold will always continue to rise, right? Because they're still mining gold and they're still using gold in certain electrical instruments and whatnot. I mean, you might as well just buy the gold though, right? Why buy the digital version of the gold? I mean, if you're just doing it to make a buck, then sure, here you go. But you could just buy physical gold. I wonder if you could go and say, okay, I own enough. I want to come and have a look at it. Because it says if you own Pax Gold, you own the underlying physical gold held in custody. Can you go and have a look at it? Just want to go and twinkle with my gold stash. Yeah, okay. Oh, fair enough. That's a good-looking chart. You want to see a bad-looking chart? Check this one. 3 letters, HEX. Take a look at the hex chart. What? Where did that go? Have they taken hex off here? It's that bad? It's no longer on here? Oh, there it is. Take a look at this chart. From the all-time high of 52. And then look at the, I guess, look at the weekly chart. 24 hour. What is that? 1, 2, 3, 3, 0, 6, 1, 9. Let's go back to the interview. Oh, here. Nope. Here.
Involvement and inclusion in the Epstein files. I mean, again, there's 3 million pages. It's going to take.
That does look sad. It is sad, dude.
For people to crowdsource and put together all of the pieces on this. I've just focused my part on cryptocurrency and CBDCs and stablecoins, and it's just absolutely breathtaking. So now, I know I'm going a little all over the map, but Bo Hines comes in as a crypto advisor. Bo Hines and Lutnick and others push this Genius Act, which Lutnick's firm is the biggest beneficiary of. And then 10 days after the Genius Act passes, Bo Hines leaves as Trump's crypto advisor and becomes the CEO of USA Tether, the USA subsidiary of Tether. Now, look, we are all familiar with revolving doors in government. I mean, this is very common in Wall Street and certainly in pharma, where you'll see somebody from the FDA who then goes on to become an advisor. But even usually there's kind of an understanding of, hey, we should at least wait 6 to 12 months. This guy left after 10 days. And so now Tether is one of the first official government-sanctioned stablecoins in the world, and Howard Lutnick is the biggest financial beneficiary. All of this, and Tether has never passed an audit.
That is a bit frightening. He looks like he has a black eye. I think it's just the shadowing from his lights on the one side of his face. Tether never having successfully passed an audit is certainly a major red flag. My advice would be not to leave any of your assets in a Tether, in a stablecoin, in particular, not USDT. There's no need to do that. Why would you do that? It's neither going to go up. The only risk is it's going to go down. If it's pegged to the US dollar, it's never going to rise in value. The only thing is it could go down. And as we found out that USDC, was it? Or no, it was USDT that was only backed to the tune of 28 cents to the dollar, not the full dollar. I tried to warn everyone about Tether since FTX collapsed. I mean, if you're leaving any of your assets on an exchange, you deserve a big slap to the head. But definitely, I wouldn't be leaving them on as a stable coin. Hell no. You might as well just have the real coin. You might as well just put it in the bank at that point. But if you are transacting on an exchange and you need to go from certain coin to a stable coin and then back out to a different chain, that's when they come in handy, and that should only be done in a temporary mindset.
Actually, before the election, I was trying to get to Trump through people that are his advisors, telling him, I think that Tether could be the Big Short 2.0. And now, based on the government involvement and the overlap of people in the administration, I think this thing is going to be too big to fail, because when you study the history of Tether and the people involved, I mean, the people that are involved with founding this were involved with, alleged Ponzi schemes prior to their involvement with Tether. There's nothing about this that looks legit for this to essentially.
The other issue is that large financial institutions use Tether to make transactions between each other. Yeah. Yeah, and if it's not pegged legitimate one-to-one as it's meant to, then are you saying that they're creating wealth because it's not backed one-to-one? Well, I mean, it is apparently, but we've found out that it's not, at least in the case of USDC. So they're creating money from nothing. It's fraud. Essentially, yeah. I would think they would use XRP/Ripple. I mean, that's the big play for why XRP is so good, right? Because that's what they are going to be using instead of Tether. They're going to use XRP. And so therefore the value of it is going to increase. That's what, in fact, I was having this discussion at my school reunion with someone who's also into crypto, and he actually convinced me to look in and maybe get a little more XRP based upon that notion. Hello, James, if you're watching. I don't think you're watching.
Become like the main shining example of crypto innovation and so forth coming out of the US. There's one other reason that the government was so eager to pass the Genius Act. As you probably know, the US has now 38, almost $39 trillion in debt. And no one wants to buy US debt anymore. Japan is not in a position to be able to buy US debt. China's selling.
It's low at the moment,
debt.
Probably a good idea. Let's take a quick pause and go and have a look at XRP. XRP. Down to $1.36 right now. Oh, it's on a down. Okay, on 24 hour. Let's have a look at the 1 month chart. Okay. Yeah, maybe this would be a good time. Let's have a look at the all-time chart. So it's up. It's up on the all-time. $1.30, but the all-time, isn't there an all-time high down here somewhere on CoinMarketCap? Highest 24-hour. All-time high, $3.84. So it's 64% down on the all-time. It's a great time to get in on XRP. Yeah. There you go. There you do go. I think maybe I will. Maybe I might.
And, certainly Congress isn't going to do something like balance the budget. We're continuing to have $1.5 trillion deficits every year. So how are they going to fund that? Well, by requiring these stable coins, which, by the way, are popular. Let me tell you how popular stable coins are. In the last 12 months, globally, stablecoins were used in $33 trillion worth of financial transactions. That's actually greater than Visa. And at the rate that it's growing, by 2030, it will be...
Wait. Who's using stablecoins to transact aside from in and out of different cryptos? What, people using them to... Did he just say that people are using them for transactions? Or did he just mean blockchain transactions, like swapping out from one to the other?
These stable coins, which, by the way, are popular. Let me tell you how popular stable coins are. In the last 12 months, globally, stable coins were used in $33 trillion worth of financial transactions. That's actually greater than Visa. And at the rate that it's growing, by 2030, it will be $120 trillion, which is more than Visa, MasterCard, and direct deposit combined. So this is a really popular solution all around the world. And now, because of that popularity, by requiring these stablecoins to be backed by treasuries, our Treasury Secretary Bessent initially said he believes we'll be able to sell $2 trillion worth of treasuries. In other words, we'll be able to fund $2 trillion in additional government debt. And he's since expanded that to now $3 trillion. So what we get out of the Genius Act is a backdoor CBDC that funds at least $3 trillion in additional debt where our Commerce Secretary's firm is the biggest beneficiary.
So he's essentially claiming that the idea of Trump saying no to the CBDC, but yet saying yes to the Genius Act is a way of getting the same thing under a different name, is essentially what I'm hearing, which I don't really get how that ties back to Epstein hijacking Bitcoin, and I don't really get how that ties to the perceived allegation. He hasn't said it, but everyone said it in the chat earlier that Epstein is Satoshi Nakamoto. I don't really get how that ties together. And I still don't get how Epstein really ties together to the block size debate. Just because he sent money to various organizations, that's what wealthy people do to make an investment profitable. You could tie him to everything if you really wanted to, judging on where he spent his money. I just don't think it's that sketchy, right? Like, it's just a wealthy dude putting his money somewhere for a return, which is what everyone's doing. You put your money somewhere because you want to get a return. You buy a house, you want it to go up in value. No one puts money somewhere hoping it disappears. Well, you do if you spend it on sports cars and motorcycles, but that's an expected decline in value, right?
It's just mind-boggling.
It is overwhelming. And I truly hope people at least have the sense to understand that this is monumental.
Why is it so monumental? Am I too dumb to get this? What's so monumental about this? Wealthy dudes putting money places. I don't get why that's so monumental. Unless I'm just not capable of grasping the basic concepts, which could well be the case.
World-changing information about what is going on the monetary scale right now. And most people, unfortunately, will not, because this is highfalutin economic sort of stuff, whatever. All I know is my stable coin will help invest for my retirement or something along those lines. But again, the scale of what has just taken place, hey, crypto, decentralized, fight the man, it's against the central banks, we can go around, we don't need them, disintermediate the banks, yay, to stable coins backed by treasuries. And that maneuver that has taken place that most people don't even understand, don't know, don't care, is incredible. And the fact that Epstein's fingerprints are on every part of this is itself incredible. Just to tie the little bow on the Epstein-Lutnick 9/11 reference, whatever that might mean, it just so happens Lutnick is another one of those lucky people who happened to miss 9/11 because, of course...
So you've lost me, right? At this point, because they live on 9 and then the house across the street's 10 and then the next house opposite or next door to Epstein is 11, they're tying that to 9/11, September 11. Are you kidding me? Really? And he wasn't on that plane? He took his 5-year-old son to the first day of kindergarten, missing the attack on the North Tower where his firm Cantor Fitzgerald was located? So suddenly that's because, like, this... So you it's a shame that they put this in at the end because the information that came before this was quite informative, but by trying to tie this crap together, you've just lost me. You've lost all validity.
Cantor Fitzgerald in the North Tower of the World Trade Center, but he wasn't there on...
So what, dude?
Interesting part of that story. But again, there's so much information that we've already gone through today, so much more detail.
It's a reach. That's the word I was looking for. Thank you, everyone. It is reaching, yeah. The stuff before that in this interview has been pretty good, but now you've just ruined your credibility by tying that back.
We'll direct people to it, but I think you sum up with a very good summary here. You say, Epstein funded the MIT devs who killed Bitcoin as cash. Brock Pierce ran the Bitcoin Foundation into the ground, opened the door for Epstein's money, brokered Epstein's Coinbase stake, which we didn't even get into, sat in Epstein's mansion pitching Bitcoin to Larry Summers, co-founded Tether, and kept emailing Epstein until 2018. Tether then printed unbacked dollars to pump Bitcoin 50% in 2017.
That part to me is the sketchiest part of this whole interview. Tether printing unbacked dollars to the tune of 28 cents or something, wasn't it? To pump, and then they bought Bitcoin with it in 2017. That's probably the biggest revelation from this interview, I feel.
Howard Lutnick, who lied about cutting ties with Epstein, took over management of Tether's $130 billion plus Treasury reserves before he even joined the Trump transition. He pushed for Treasury Secretary, missed, landed at Commerce, installed his ally Bo Hines as White House crypto advisor, had Hines run through the Genius Act, then watched Hines quit the White House and immediately become CEO of Tether's U.S. subsidiary. Just an incredible amount of information. And you sum up with every single player is connected. Every single move was coordinated.
Oh, I doubt that highly. Every single move was coordinated. I doubt that.
This act entrenches the exact loopholes Tether has lived on. This is not Big Short 2.0. This is Big Short 2.0 on steroids, pre-planned and run by the same network that already owns the outcome. Just an incredible amount of
this is all tied to FTX too. People made a lot of money from that collapse. People made money from the FTX collapse. Right, the ones that pulled out before the collapse, that knew of the collapse.
Information and detail here. So once again, I'll exhort people to watch, to read this article. But I guess the real question here, Aaron, is what should we do with this information?
Well, I want to say this. That article I wrote pretty quickly, just because of the pace of development and how relevant it is to what's going on. But there's another article that I've written for the Brownstone Institute that hasn't been published yet, but it's 12,000 words, and it goes into the Genius Act, financial regulation, and something called the Clarity Act, because I do want to talk about the fact that there's something even worse than the Genius Act on the horizon, and people don't understand it at all. People don't even know what's going on, and it's called the Clarity Act. Now, if you've heard about the Clarity Act, you will hear it as this is going to provide clear rules of the road for people to be able to buy and sell crypto, so on and so forth. This is not what it's about, and it's not a bill that's about crypto. It's about creating digital tokens that can be programmed, tracked, and censored for everything that we own. So if the Genius Act covers how we pay for things, the Clarity Act adds this surveillance and tracking to everything that we own, our stocks, our 401ks, commodities, oil, agriculture, eventually real estate. All of it is going to be tokenized. Larry Fink has talked about this. At BlackRock, he said that everything is going to be tokenized.
Sorry, everyone posted a link, a long-ass article, but it shows all the connections between those people. Oh, okay. I won't look at that right now, but thanks for posting it.
The bill is working its way. It's already passed the House, and it's going through various iterations. But this is how we end up owning nothing. And not to go into too many details about this, but if you've ever talked about the Great Taking, there's a whole bunch of the legal framework shifts that have happened in the United States since 1994 that essentially make it so that the next time there's a financial collapse, you might think if your broker goes out of business that, well, hey, those are my investments. I'll just point those over to a new broker. Well, it turns out in all 50 states, they've changed the laws so that, in fact, your economic interest in these investments will go first to the creditors of your broker, which namely will be the 4 largest banks in the US. Once you create digital tokens that represent these contracts, then when there's a financial collapse, they're going to be able to basically shift everybody's assets with a click of a button. So I wanted to mention that because
Hey Lou.
It's
Hey Lou. Lou Rock's in the house. Much love. Great to see you live. Cheers. Thanks, man. How you doing, Lou? Good to see you, man.
relevant and it's active right now. And Howard Lutnick's firm is
Jude's in the house.
To be
Jude Jitsu. How you doing, Jude? We're just learning about
beneficiary.
We're learning about how Epstein hijacked Bitcoin. Apparently, it's not really that convincing me, but it's interesting. It's definitely educational and informative.
In this as well. So you asked what we can do. We have to absolutely make it public and accessible for everyone to understand how not only corrupt this is, but this tokenization through these 2 bills is accelerating technocracy. I've been saying that this last election that we had was technocracy with resistance versus technocracy without resistance, and technocracy without resistance won. We got backdoor CBDCs. We have in the United States Real ID, which is a digital ID. We have Palantir connected into federal government databases. We have AI surveillance. technocracy has flourished. I mean, this isn't like a 2030 thing. This is a 2027 thing. So I wanted to mention that. But I don't really believe.
Netskis was going to do a stream, but needs an early night. No worries. Lou Skis, they had theories that Epstein started Bitcoin, but a grain of salt. That's what this interview's been kind of trying to put forward. I'm just not buying it. I'm not buying it at all.
Solutions for this, which is why what I've been advocating for as a real solution is to exit these systems. Stop using fiat currency. Do not use government-regulated stablecoins. Get out of centralized tokenization. Start using privacy coins. Start using gold. Start using silver. Exit the healthcare system in the United States, which, my wife and I have launched it's a free service. We don't make any money off of it. It's a global medical tourism marketplace. But, every minute in the U.S., somebody files for bankruptcy due to medical bills in the U.S. 75% of those have insurance. The system is a complete scam. Exit that, cancel your insurance, form a trust, and then investigate using medical tourism where you can actually save up to 80% and get better healthcare outcomes. The real solution to this is for us to take our lives back, to take back our free will, and to build parallel systems. At this point, this is the way, and we can do it, but we really don't have a lot of time. And I have been, for the 3.5 years, I've been saying this is it. Technocracy is it. Digital currencies, this is the platform. But it's even happening faster than I could have ever imagined, and it is more corrupt and incestuous than I could have ever imagined. And now, for the first time, because of these Epstein files, we can actually follow the money and start tracking what's going on.
All right, an incredible amount of information. I'm very much looking forward to that 12,000 word deep dive and hopefully more information yet to come. But for the meantime, we will direct people to brownstone.org for this article that we're talking about today. It's called The Hijacking of Bitcoin. Everything that we have talked about today will be in the show notes for today's episode at corbettreport.com/Epstein Bitcoin. For all of the notes and all of the links to everything that we're talking about. I think we're going to leave it there for today. Aaron Day, thank you very much for this deep dive and for bringing it to our attention.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So take that as you will. Learn from what as you can. I found that interesting that there was not any mention of Ethereum in there. Like, if we're talking about the code of Bitcoin being hijacked by a big player, doesn't that open the door for code that cannot be changed? Doesn't that open the door for decentralized cryptocurrency? Doesn't that open the door for that conversation? We went everywhere else in that 50-minute interview, but we didn't go down that avenue. I just thought that was intriguing. So thank you for hanging out with me here on the stream. For those that are just joining now, I'm going to wrap up here, but I did have something important to say at the beginning of the stream. If you want to go back and watch, say, the first half an hour, at least up until the surfing video, it's just me kind of talking a little about something that's come up with me in relation to the live stream that I did on the weekend. And to just summarize it super quickly, I'm an angry man right now, and I don't want to be, and that came out in that stream. So we talked about that at the beginning of this stream. I'm going to end it here now, so once it's processed or whatever, you can go and check it on any of the platforms wherever you're watching, but go back on the YouTube and watch from the beginning. The first half hour, I just talk about the anger issues and what I'm going to do about that. Also talk about this skin cancer that I had cut out today. So that's some interesting conversation, at least anyway. Isn't Zcash supposed to be better than Bitcoin, i.e. a private, and it has some amount of coin? Yeah, I've heard about that, Zcash. Yeah, and it's got good value too. Referred to being a high priest of finance in another interview. That was very interesting. Yeah, right. I hate that. Anyway, folks, thanks for hanging out with me. I'll be live again tomorrow. I'm not working tomorrow, so I'll hang out with you guys when that happens. I appreciate you, and thanks for being here live with me. I'll catch you all on the flip side. And don't forget to farkle in the chat. I came in during the surfing, but you're a good dude. Wishing you all the best. Thanks, everyone. Yeah, go back, rewind, and watch the start. Yeah. Cheers, folks.
In the chat, bringing loss to the
Farkle in the chat, whatever the heck that means.
Jack fine. Gives a minute, yeah, we take our time. Living in the moment, life's a subtle rhyme. From the land down under, screaming through the night. New Zealand's vibe, surfing waves day to night. Always looking for the next thrill, that's where I ignite. Community so solid, always shining bright. Rolling deep and cruising for the height.